Hello everyone, welcome to this talk called FOLI Combiners and Hybrid Post-Quantum Cryptography. I'm Loïs and this is joint work with Serge Vaudenay. So hybrid cryptography addresses the following problem. How can we build a crypto system that is secure as long as one of the underlying building block is secure? And we say that the way two cryptographic primitives are combined together is called a combiner. And if the resulting scheme is secure as long as one or more of the underlying primitives is secure, then the combiner is robust. There have been many robust combiners proposed throughout the years for hash functions, signatures, PKE, KEM, etc. But today we focus mainly on PKE and KEM combiners. There are several advantages of PQ hybrid encryption. For instance, we can guarantee the security before quantum by combining a classical scheme such as RSA that we trust with a newer scheme like Kyber or Saber, for instance. And as long as quantum computers do not exist, then our scheme will most likely be secure. Also, for compliance to standards, for instance, we can combine a standard scheme with a non-standard one, and maybe the result will be considered as standard. For a smooth transition from classical crypto to PQ crypto, we can combine a classical scheme again with a PQ one, and newer systems will use both the classical and PQ one, while the older systems will use only the classical part. And also we can combine multiple PQ schemes together for better security, and this is what we focus on today. More specifically, we asked ourselves how to build a standalone in-CCA KEM based on several assumptions. Now, one way to do this would be to take a first PKE1, to apply the Fujisaki-Okamoto transform to obtain an in-CCA KEM, and then to use a KEM combiner to get a hybrid KEM. Now, usually the KEM combiners use different building blocks such as MAC or dual PRF or PRF, which must be quantum secure. And in addition, we need to make some computation on the ciphertext. So it can be an expensive operation, and we need other building blocks. So our idea, which is quite simple, is to directly take two PKE and output a hybrid KEM, which is in-CCA secure as long as at least one of the PKE is secure, or is CPA secure. So our contributions, we present FO-like robust combiners. So we call them Fujisaki-Okamoto-like because they replace, in a sense, the FO transform, and they are secure in the random oracle model, and one of them is secure in the QROM. Now, the QROM or the ROM assumption is not really a problem because the Fujisaki-Okamoto is secure in the ROM anyway. We present several variants of this combiner with different hash combinations. And also we implement, benchmark, and analyze a fully PQ hybrid KEM built with our combiner as a proof of concept. So let's start with the first combiner that we call the T-parallel or T-combiner. So the idea is to take two CPA secure PKE and to output a hybrid one-way PCA PKE. So PCA stands for plain text checking attack. So what is a one-way PCA? It's nearly the same as a traditional one-wayness. So we sample a plain text at random, and we give to the adversary the encryption of this plain text. And the goal of the adversary is to recover the plain text. Now in a PCA, the adversary has access to a PCA oracle, which stands for plain text checking oracle, which takes a ciphertext and a plain text and outputs whether the decryption of the ciphertext is equal to the given plain text. So basically this models a reaction attack where the adversary can observe whether decryption corresponds to a plain text or not. And once we have our hybrid one-way PCA PKE, which is secure as long as at least one of these is CPA secure, Then we can use the Q transform by Fines et al. That takes the PCA PKE and outputs in CCA KEM. So this is the combination of the Q transform with our T transform. It looks like applying a Fujitaki-Okamoto in parallel. So first we sample two seeds, sigma 1 and sigma 2 at random. And we encrypt sigma 1 with the first PKE. And we de-randomize. So we use as random coins the hash of the first seed, where the hash is a random oracle. And similarly for the second seed, we encrypt it with the second PKE. And we de-randomize by using random coins that are the hash of the second seed. And then the key is simply the hash of all the seeds and of the ciphertext as well. And finally, we also have a confirmation hash, or like a tag if you want. So we output the hash of sigma 1 and sigma 2, and H prime is like another random oracle. And in decapsulation, we use both secret keys that correspond to the first and second PKE respectively, and the three ciphertexts. We decrypt the first ciphertext and the second one to get back sigma 1 and sigma 2. And then we re-encrypt sigma 1. And we can do this because the encryption is deterministic. It depends only on sigma 1. And we do the same for sigma 2. In a way, we check whether the ciphertext are well formed. And if it fails, we output an error. And otherwise, we check the tag. And if the tag is correct, we return the key. And we prove that our combiner outputs in CCA KEM if at least PKE1 or PKE2 is one-way CPA secure. Now, a nice feature of our combiner is the independence of ciphertext. So it means that CT1 depends only on sigma 1, and CT2 depends only on sigma 2. So it would be very useful for parallelization because we can compute CT1 and CT2 in parallel, completely in parallel. But then maybe a weird feature is that CTI, like CT1 or CT2, is a valid ciphertext for the KEM that corresponds to the Fujitaki-Okamoto applied on PKE. So for instance, if we take the in-CPA version of Kyber in our hybrid, then CT1 will be a valid ciphertext for Kyber. So that might be useful in some applications because we can use CT1 as a ciphertext for the hybrid or for the standalone KEM if you want. But maybe in other applications, that might be a security issue. And we derive the key as the hash on the seeds and the ciphertext. But since the ciphertext can be quite large in PQ, then that can be an expensive operation. So this is what we want to improve with our UT combiner. And so with Q parallel, we take two CPA PKE as before, but we don't make any intermediary step. We go straight from CPA to hybrid in CCA KEM. Now we prove this result only in the ROM and not in the QROM, but we conjecture that with new QROM techniques, such as the standard, the compressed oracle technique, maybe we could prove that Q is secure in the QROM as well. So this is the UT combiner. This is quite similar to applying trivial combiners to PKE and then applying the Fujitaki-Okamoto transform. So GEN is trivial. We compute we sample two pairs of public key secret key. Then in the encapsulation, as before, we sample some random seeds. And then now we encrypt the first seed with the first PKE, but the random coins will depend on both sigma 1 and sigma 2. And similarly for the second ciphertext, this is the encryption of the second seed, with random coins that depends on both sigma 1 and sigma 2. And we must be careful to put like 1 and 2 here, or like different values to separate the random oracles, such that both these values, both the random coins, will be kind of independent. And then we derive the key as the hash of the XOR of sigma 1 and sigma 2. So we see that now there is no computation involving the ciphertext. And in the decapsulation, we first pass the secret key as like both SK1 and SK2. Then we decrypt the first ciphertext and the second ciphertext. We re-encrypt with the correct coins. And if there is some error, we return the bogus symbol, and otherwise we return the hash of the XOR of both decrypted seeds. Now we're interested in how our combiner resists to misuse or misimplementation, because we saw that in practice, the implementation of random oracles is very tricky. In the NIST process, for instance, everyone has its own recipe of how to implement the OROs in the Fujisaki-Okamoto transform, and that can lead to security issues. And more specifically, can we replace the function G that computes the deterministic coins, or H that derive the key, by other ORO-based functions? So for instance, can we replace G by another function that computes the coins as G1 of sigma 1 XOR G2 of sigma 2? And the answer is yes, and we define two properties that are sufficient for our scheme to be secure if we replace G and H, the random oracles, by other functions that are based on random oracles. And we call these two properties ERF for extractable random functions for G, and IUQ for indistinguishable unless queried for H. Now IUQ is a bit weaker than ERF, and that's why we define two different properties. Note that these properties are sufficient for you to be secure, but they are not necessary. And what these properties mean is that G or H should look uniform unless both sigma 1 and sigma 2 are queried to the random oracles. And in the proof, it means that either G or H looks uniform, or the adversary in the reduction can recover both sigma 1 and sigma 2. Here are two examples of ERF. In the first one, we compute G I sigma 1 sigma 2 by querying a first random oracle on sigma 1 XOR sigma 2, and we XOR the result with G of I sigma I. And the second one is completely parallel, and it computes G as G1 of I sigma 1 XORed with G2 I sigma 2. And actually this combiner is a hash combiner. So basically, if one of G2 or H2 is not a random oracle, then the result still looks random. Basically, if we assume that the hash functions G2 and H2 are broken, for instance, they output a constant value, then the value G and H are still indistinguishable from uniform unless G1 or H1 sigma 1 is queried. So unless sigma 1 can be recovered in the proof. And in turn, it means that we cannot put two blocks into our UT transform. The first block with PKE1, G1, H1, and the other one PKE2, G2, and H2. And for instance, if PKE1 is one-way CPA, G1 is a random oracle, and H1 is a random oracle, then regardless of the security properties of these, then the output KEM will be INCC secure. So it can improve the trust into the way we compute the random coins, and we derive the key with the random oracles. So we also implemented as a proof of concept our combiner. We use two NCPA PKEs, which are post-quantum, LAC and HQC. So this experiment was conducted before they announced the round 3 schemes. So that's why we used the LAC and HQC, which did not pass to the third round. So we picked LAC because this is one of the most efficient schemes, but it is vulnerable to attacks, to failure attacks, to be precise. And HQC offers performances that are okay, but the honest assumption is quite new. And HQC is code-based, while LAC is lattice-based. So we can imagine that a breakthrough in lattice-based cryptography that would break LAC, for instance, should not impact HQC, which is based on a completely different assumption. So by combining them, we might remove these security concerns. For the implementation, we use the NCPA reference implementations of LAC and HQC provided by the authors. And we implemented both a standard and parallelized version of the hybrid. So parallel means that the encryption and decryption of LAC and HQC, like the CPU version, is done in parallel. For G1, we used SHA-256. For G2, the AES-based expansion function provided by the NIST. And for H, we used SHA-512. Here are our results. We put Frodo and Kyber for comparison. And if we focus first on the size of the secret key, public key, and ciphertext, we see that without any surprise, the size of the secret key, public key, and ciphertext of the hybrid is merely the addition of the size of HQC and the size of LAC. Now, since HQC has quite large ciphertext and public key, we can also see that the difference between HQC and the hybrid is quite small. And if we consider KeyGen, Encaps, and Decaps time, then again, the performance of HQC LAC is the addition of the performance of HQC and LAC, except for the parallel version, where HQC is the bottleneck. So we see that the difference between HQC and the parallel hybrid is very small, and it's basically the time to create a thread. That can be seen on graphs. So here we represent all the run 2 PQ proposals. So for instance, here are the lattice-based ones with Frodo here. And we see that the hybrid LAC HQC performs nearly as well as HQC if we take the full PQ picture. This is also the case for Decaps time against Encaps time, where the hybrid is very close to HQC. And this is the same for KeyGen time against the public key size. So the message here is that if one is willing to use HQC, which might not be the most efficient PQ scheme, then one might as well use a hybrid that arguably adds a lot of security at a very small cost. So let's conclude. We proposed combiners that are simple and efficient. In particular, no extra primitives are needed, like MAC, PRF, or DPRF. And we don't need to compute these primitives on ciphertext that can be quite large in PQ. Now our combiner follows a different paradigm from KEM combiners because it replaces the effort transform. So typically, we would expect that our combiner would be implemented at the crypto layer, or like in cryptographic libraries, where we want to combine 2 assumptions to get a standalone KEM, whereas existing KEM combiners would typically be implemented in protocols where we want to combine 2 key shares, for instance. And also our combiner offers flexibility in implementation of random oracles. We saw that we can compute the random coins and we can drive the key in different ways. And finally, we hope that we showed that we can that PQ KEM based on several assumptions are worth considering. It might increase security at a small cost. Thank you very much for listening.